Welcome back to another episode of What If Naruto Had a Big Brother? In this alternate Naruto universe, one small twist changes everything. What if Naruto wasn't alone? What if he grew up with someone stronger, smarter, and born to rewrite destiny itself? Today, we dive deeper into the story of Kaito Uzumaki, Naruto's powerful older brother whose existence shakes the entire Shinobi world. New alliances form, new enemies rise, and the future of Konoha may never be the same again. So sit back, relax, and get ready, because this episode is about to change everything. As for you, Kaito said to Sasuke, we'll say you're his sensei. Both of you are traveling performers. I'll handle Tsunade. Sasuke gave a curt nod. That should work. Kaito turned serious. Are you sure you're strong enough to face this guy? You looked drained. I was going easy on you, especially you, he said, glancing at Boruto. Boruto bristled. TCH. We got caught off guard. I could take you any time. Kaito raised an eyebrow. Yeah. I don't think so. Before Boruto could finish his retort, they walked into a clearing where three kids stood with Kaito's shadow clone. Kaito waved them off sheepishly. Sorry, you three. Had to check them. He jerked his thumb towards Sasuke and Boruto and scratched the back of his head. Shikamaru sighed. Man, you scared us. I thought enemy ninja. Sakura pouted. Yeah, sensei. Don't scare us like that. Hinata, calm as ever, added softly, Ayano. He wanted to make sure they weren't a threat. Kaito yawned and gestured for everyone to move. Come on, we're close to the village. As they walked, Shikamaru glanced at Kaito. So what got you worked up? Who are they? Kaito introduced Sasuke and Boruto and ran through the cover story. Hinata frowned. Ayano, if they're not enemies, why did you fight them? Kaito turned to her with a teasing eyebrow. Were you using your Byakugan? She nodded. He patted her head. Nice work, Hina-chan. Good awareness. He softened. I had my reasons. I can't say much, you know, ninja stuff. Hinata trusted him without question. Boruto, curious, asked about the training exercise. Kaito explained they'd been retrieving a scroll from the stone face of Waradakumi. So, basically a field trip? Boruto grinned. They reached the village gates where Irika waited. Good, you finally made it, he said, folding his arms. Are we last? Kaito asked. Irika nodded. First team was back 2 hours ago. Kaito scratched his head. My bad. We got sidetracked. He smiled apologetically at his students. Shikamaru muttered about sleeping, then Irika reminded him of the academy's closing ceremony. At the gate, Izumo and Kotetsu were on duty. Izumo grinned. Yo, Kaito. Been a while. Kaito returned the grin. You guys stuck at the tower too? Kotetsu rolled his eyes. Lady Tsunade had us doing paperwork. Hell. We finally got our guard duties back. Kaito commiserated, then handed registration duties over. Kotetsu asked about the two strangers. Kaito pointed. Blonde is Boruto, dark-haired is Ichigo. Izumo logged them. Kotetsu handed out entry slips with a weary warning about registration and interrogation for anyone who skips it. Shisui appeared and greeted Kaito. They chatted briefly. Kaito asked a favor. Could Shisui escort Sasuke and Boruto to the Hokage's office? Shisui agreed. Then, with a small flourish, chakra chains shot from Kaito's back and wrapped Hinata, Shikamaru, Sakura, and Irika. Hey! What? They exclaimed. In a blink, Hiraition, and they vanished. Boruto gaped. Where'd they go? Shisui laughed. That's Kaito for you. He led the two time travelers toward the village. The academy lay buzzing with parents and students. Kaito reappeared beside Itachi, his group landing with a pop as he set everyone down. Kaito and I. Naruto called. Where were you? We waited 30 minutes. Sorry, Kaito said tiredly as he retracted his chains. Shikamaru cursed under his breath and fell into line. The ceremony began. Kaito's thoughts were miles away, worrying about Urashiki and how to keep Naruto, Kushina, and Karen safe. Kushina shook him out of his reverie. "Kaikuan, you okay?" she asked. "Yeah, Mom. Just tired," he lied, smiling weakly. Karen announced their team had won a month's worth of free ice cream. Kushina fussed at Kaito to rest and offered to get dinner ready. Kaito insisted he'd stop by the Hokage's office first. Kushina worried, then agreed. Izumi, Hana, and Hataru arrived, dragging Itachi with them. Hana accused Kaito of flaking on dinner plans. "I've got to meet the Hokage," Kaito said. "Tomorrow, my treat." They cheered. Hana set the time. Kaito sweat-dropped at his own trap. In Tsunade's office, Kaito stood with Sasuke and Boruto before the Hokage's blunt stare. "So he's a long-lost cousin and this one's his sensei. Traveling performers checking for relatives. Convenient." Tsunade looked unconvinced. Kaito scratched his head. "Yeah, that's the story." Tsunade studied them, sighed, then gave the order. "Don't cause trouble. You answer for them if they do. Now go, I've got paperwork." Kaito beamed. "Thanks, Grandma Tsunade. They won't be a problem, you can count on me." Tsunade waved without looking up and dove back into her documents. Kaito's smile faded to something more guarded as he left her office. The future had just dropped into his timeline, and Urashiki would be arriving soon. "So," Tsunade began, her gaze razor-sharp, "he's your long-lost cousin from your father's side." She jabbed a finger at Sasuke. "And this is his sensei?" "Traveling performers who came to check for relatives in Konoha." "That about right." Kaito shifted, scratched the back of his head, and forced a sheepish grin. "Yeah." Boruto fidgeted under Tsunade's stare. Sasuke remained unreadable. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. "And you just happened to run into them while heading back to the village?" "Convenient." Her eyes narrowed. "And you're sure he's your cousin? Just because his chakra signature is similar to yours, Naruto's, and your father's?" Kaito swallowed and gave a nervous nod. Yes." Tsunade held him with a long look, then sighed and slumped slightly in her chair. "Look, I don't need the whole story. Just keep them from causing trouble. If they do, you answer for it." She waved them away and dove back into her paperwork. Kaito's relief was palpable. "Thanks, Grandma Tsunade. You can count on me, you know," he chirped, and Tsunade waved him off without looking up. They walked home under the afternoon sun, long shadows stretching before them. Sasuke glanced sideways. "Is it necessary for me to come to dinner?" Kaito shrugged. "My mom's cooking for all of us. Waste not, you know. Also, Lady Tsunade would probably have my head if I let you roam the village alone." Sasuke only sighed. Kaito pulled out a small stack of Ryo and handed it to Sasuke. "Take this. Should last a week. Future money probably won't go far here." Sasuke accepted it with a quiet nod. Boruto, hands in his pockets, piped up. "Really okay for me to stay over?" Kaito eyed him. "You cause trouble wherever you go. Better keep you close." Boruto scowled. "What's that supposed to mean?" Sasuke's deadpan. "No, he's not wrong." At the Uzumaki porch they removed sandals, lined them neatly, and Kaito called, "Mom, I'm home. I brought guests." Kushina poked her head out, towel in hand, then froze. Her eyes went wide, misted over, and without warning she collapsed into tears. "Kushina." Kaito dropped to his knees. Panic and confusion ripped through the room as Naruto, Karen, Hoku, Kimimaro, and Guren spilled in. Boruto and Sasuke stood awkwardly, unsure what they'd triggered. "Ma'am?" Boruto asked softly. Kaito rubbed Kushina's back. "Mom, talk to me. What's wrong?" Kushina clutched at a tissue, voice trembling. "That kid. She could not finish. Her entire body shook. Naruto, seeing his mother cry, snapped. "What did you do to Mom?" Boruto stammered, "I didn't do anything. I swear." Kimimaro's jaw tightened and a bone blade creaked into place in his palm. The room thickened with tension. Haku's eyes narrowed, Guren's fingers twitched, chakra humming. Kaito stepped between them. Enough. All of you calm down. Kushina put up a trembling hand. I'm fine, I'm fine. She forced a weak smile, wiped her face and then, softly, looked at Kaito. Tell me the truth, Kaikuan. That kid. He's your father's son, isn't he? Silence dropped like a stone. Boruto's exclamation, EHH. Wait, what? Sasuke closed his eyes and pinched the bridge of his nose. Kushina's voice was barely a whisper. He looks like Minato, same hair, same eyes. It's like seeing a younger version of him. She sobbed, how could Minato, then turned accusing eyes on Kaito. You were acting shifty because of this, weren't you? Kaito crouched, voice low. No, he's not Dad's son. He's Naruto's son. From the future. He forced the words out gently. Look, he even has whisker marks. That's Naruto's chakra. And the man with him? That's Sasuke. Look closer. Kushina blinked, stunned, then walked straight up to Boruto. She inspected his face as if memorizing it, thumb brushing a whisker mark like it might rub off. Boruto froze. Ah, ma'am. Then Kushina's expression shifted, astonishment melted into adoring affection. She pulled him into a hug. You look so cute, she cooed, pressing her cheek to his. Boruto went rigid, everyone else stared. Kushina straightened, embarrassed but radiant. False alarm. Nothing to worry about. Come eat, everyone. Dinner turned warm and domestic. Haku, Guren, and Kimimaro insisted on washing dishes. Kushina eventually relented, handing them wrapped leftovers and scolding them like family. Naruto, exhausted, collapsed at the table and promptly fell asleep. When the house quieted and the guests left, Kushina sat close to Kaito and leaned toward Boruto with sparkling eyes. Tell me everything about my boys. How many grandkids do I have? Who did they marry? Boruto laughed nervously and Sasuke stopped him. We can't tell you. It could change things. Kushina's smile faltered. Oh. Kaito sighed. In this case it wouldn't. The room froze at that. Sasuke's gaze sharpened. Kushina asked, bewildered, what do you mean? Kaito explained slowly. The turtles said they'd landed in an alternate time stream. In their future, Kaito didn't exist. Kushina didn't survive the Nine-Tails Night. Naruto grew up alone, used as a weapon. The Uchiha massacre had an entirely different outcome there, and the chain of events left scars that don't match this world. Kushina's hands trembled. So, in their timeline you and I aren't alive? Sasuke said nothing, but his look answered. Kaito continued, careful and blunt. If Shisui had no one to watch his back, Danzo took his eye. Without help, Shisui probably didn't survive. That leaves one person who could have carried out the massacre to save you, Itachi. The air went cold. Kaito met Sasuke's eyes. They probably gave him an ultimatum, wipe out the clan and let his brother live, or they slaughter everyone. Knowing Itachi, he chose to protect you. Sasuke was still. Then slowly he closed his eyes, exhaled, and agreed, no. You're not wrong. Boruto gaped. Wait, what? He did that. Kaito shrugged. Politics. Ugly stuff. Kushina covered her mouth and whimpered. My poor baby had to go through that alone. Her eyes darted to Boruto. So, does that mean Boruto-kun won't be born in this timeline? Kaito shook his head. I don't know. If Naruto marries Hinata here, maybe. Even then, that Boruto wouldn't be the same. Boruto blinked. How do you even know who my mom is? Kaito smirked. Your chakra has traces like the Hyuga. Your face lines up with Hinata's. Your name, Boruto, fits the family naming patterns. And the way you looked at Hinata earlier? Yeah, it's her. Boruto gaped. Sasuke's eyes narrowed in quiet calculation. Kaito turned a grin on Sasuke. And I'm guessing you end up with Sakura. Boruto lost it. How did you figure that out? Sasuke's surprise matched Boruto's. Seriously, how did you know? Kaito shrugged, delighted. You were amused when we ran into my team. Sakura kept glancing. Too obvious. I just guessed. Boruto stared at him like he'd read minds. You're insane. Kaito let out a slow breath and nodded. All right. We'll handle this here first. Mom, can you move to the table? I need a clean surface. Sasuke, keep watch by the door. If anything strange shows up, I want you to know about it before I do. Sasuke's one-word reply was quiet and steady. Understood. Kushina moved with brisk efficiency, wiping the kitchen table clean and setting out a small tray of tools. Inkstone, sealing chalk, a strip of parchment Kaito pulled from a storage seal, and a cloth. Boruto sat on the chair like a kid waiting for a dentist. He fidgeted, nerves written all over his face. Kaito crouched to be eye level with him, forcing a grin he didn't entirely feel. We're not going to rip it off or anything dramatic. I need you to stay calm and breathe. If you get dizzy, tell me. Boruto swallowed and nodded. Kaito closed his eyes and drew in a careful thread of natural energy. He let the imperfect sage mode settle around him again, not enough to go full out, but to give him access to the subtle chakra frequency differences inside that mark. The dark lines under his eyes flared faintly. Okay, he said, voice low. I can sense it more clearly now. It's layered. There's an outer seal structure, and under that a living pattern that's rewriting the host's chakra. It reacts to living chakra, like it scans and remodels. Kushina's brow tightened. So it's not just a signature. It's actively changing him. Yeah. Kaito tapped the back of his hand against the table to steady himself. He formed a slow, precise string of hand seals, then extended 2 thin strands of chakra, not chains to bind, but fine threading chakra like a needle and thread. The strands were infused with his senjutsu sensitivity. They shimmered faintly in the kitchen light. Kaito's plan was simple in principle. Copy the pattern at the container level without destabilizing the host. If he could make a precise imprint of the seal's chakra frequency and topology, he could construct a mirror seal that would block further rewriting, buy time at least, and give Tsunade and the research team something to analyze. He pressed his palm lightly near Boruto's mark, concentrating. The senjutsu threads probed, read, and traced the invisible lines of foreign chakra. Boruto flinched once. Kaito paused and soothed him. Easy. Don't move. Kushina watched, eyes wide and fierce with a kind of desperate hope. Be careful, Kaikuen. As the threads mapped the pattern, Kaito hummed a tiny, stabilizing tone, an Uzumaki binding resonance he and Kushina had practiced together for years. Kushina joined, closing her own hand near his and singing in an old Uzumaki sealing cadence. Their combined resonance damped the mark's active behavior long enough for Kaito's senjutsu to copy the structure. On the parchment, the candlelight caught a faint, glyph-like impression where chakra reacted to Kaito's copy seal. It was fragile and incomplete, like tracing someone's handwriting through a thick fog, but it carried layers, geometric sigils overlaid with a living, almost organic glyph that pulsed faintly when Kaito's senjutsu brushed it. Kaito exhaled, the sage markings around his eyes slowly receding. Got it. I got a working imprint. He looked up at Sasuke and Boruto. It's not a full cure, but it's something. I can forge a temporary inhibitor with this imprint to stop the integration from advancing. It'll slow the process, maybe stall it entirely, but it won't remove what's already merged. Boruto's voice cracked. Then do it. Do whatever it takes. Kushina's hands were steady as she helped position Boruto's hand and then placed the parchment near Kaito's palm. Kaito traced the imprint into the sealing chalk, layering the lines with Uzumaki knots and Kushina's own tide pattern stitches. Once the design was complete, he sealed the parchment into a small ceramic box with a final, decisive chant. This is a dampener, Kaito explained as he pressed the finished box to Boruto's mark and whispered the activation phrase. It creates a low-frequency counterfield that interferes with the mark's rewriting cadence. Think of it like putting glue on the gears of a machine so it can't turn. For a moment nothing happened. Then Boruto's fingers twitched, the faint inner glow of the mark dimmed by a noticeable fraction. Boruto let out a shaky breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Kushina's face flooded with relief. She covered her mouth. Kaikuen, you did it. Kaito rubbed his forehead and allowed himself a small, exhausted smile. It slowed it. Not gone, but slowed. I can feel the conversion rate drop. He turned to Sasuke. We buy time. How long? Hard to say, could be hours, could be days. I want Tsunade and the medical teams to look at the imprint and run it through analysis. The turtle's logs said this came from an Otsutsuki technique. If that's true, normal seals might not fully stop it. Sasuke folded his arms. We should quarantine him from heavy chakra users for now. Any strong external chakra could interfere and cause a rebound. Kaito nodded. Agreed. Boruto stays here for the night. I'll take the imprint copy and the box to Tsunade in the morning. We'll need her and the research division to analyze the glyph's topology and match it to any known Otsutsuki methods. Kushina, can you keep Boruto calm? I'll set a barrier around the house. He looked at Boruto. You okay with that? Boruto straightened, expression determined despite the fatigue. Yeah. I'm not going anywhere. I don't want that thing to finish me while I run around. I'll stay. Kushina wrapped an arm around Boruto like he was family, which by the way she saw it, he was. You stay put and eat. And if you try to run, I'll put you in a headlock so tight you'll forget your own name, she threatened playfully, then softened. But seriously, we'll fix this. Kaito stood, collected the sealed box and the parchment copy, and drew faint chakra chains around the perimeter of the house. Simple detection lines that would tingle if anyone with hostile intent crossed them. He stamped a small privacy ward on the door so the barrier division wouldn't ping Konoha's network unless he lifted it. Before he left, he looked at Sasuke. You mind staying a bit longer? If the turtle said Urashiki arrives in a few days, we might not be the only ones dealing with future tech issues. Sasuke's mouth twitched, the closest thing to a small smile. I'll stay. Someone has to make sure you don't improvise us into more trouble. Kaito grinned. Thanks. And Sasuke? He waited. You protected him, Sasuke said simply, voice clipped but not unkind. That was the right call. Kaito's chest warmed in a way that had nothing to do with sage energy. He bowed half-jokingly. I try. That night, Kushina sat cross-legged at the table and taught Boruto a breathing exercise to steady his chakra and ease the dampener's work. Boruto tried to mimic the rhythm, 2 clumsy breaths for every patient inhale Kushina took. Between lessons, Kushina peppered him with grandmotherly questions. He answered in fits and starts, but the small mundane chatter helped. Kaito, outside beneath the stars, tested the dampener's readings and sent a careful, encrypted Hiratian ping to Tsunade, a short note and the phrase urgent, seal analysis required. Uzumaki household. Bring lab. He didn't ask permission so much as inform. Tsunade had already given them room to breathe, and he needed the village's specialists. He didn't have to wait long. The reply that came back, curt and immediate, was exactly Tsunade, on my way. Don't break my village while I'm en route. Kaito let out an exhausted laugh and let his mind wander for a moment. To the turtle's warning about an alternate time stream, to the mark at Boruto's palm, to the fact that strangers from the future had just walked into his kitchen and sat at his table like they belonged. The world kept getting weirder. He tightened one of the barrier threads, feeling the weight of the next few days settle on his shoulders. They'd bought time. They had a partial imprint. But whatever had left that mark knew how to live inside a human being. Whoever or whatever it had been, it wasn't done yet. Kaito looked up at the moon and muttered softly, more to himself than anyone else, all right? We stole it. We study it. And if anyone comes through looking for Urashiki's tools or that mark, we stop them. Inside the house, Kushina hummed as she taught Boruto to count breaths. Boruto, for once, wasn't trying to be a hero, just a kid listening to a woman who'd already called him grandson, and meant it. Sasuke stared into the dark, silent as stone, a sentinel between timelines. Outside, on the edge of Konoha, something in the thin dark seemed to shift, like a ripple far away. Someone or something was closing the distance between its plan and this timeline. Kaito felt the prickle at the back of his neck and tightened the barrier threads again. He had until morning, and perhaps a little longer. That would have to be enough. Boruto lay there for a beat, chest heaving, eyes blinking as if the world had suddenly shifted. A slow flush of embarrassment crawled up his neck, the pride that had driven him in vanished like smoke. He spluttered, scrambling to his feet, fists clenched. You're impossible. Kaito merely shrugged, hands still in his pockets, expression bored in a way that made Boruto want to punch him all over again. You hit like a kid with a grudge. Technique isn't everything. Timing, reading your opponent, and not letting your emotions decide your moves, that's what actually wins fights. Boruto gaped. You're lecturing me after wrecking me in the first 20 seconds? Dude, the nerve. Kushina laughed, clapping her hands. Enough teasing. Boruto-chan, try again, but this time don't rush. Show him what you can really do. Naruto, who'd been sulking a moment before, bounced to his feet and shouted, Yeah. Don't give up, Boruto. Kainai, don't go easy either. Show him what it means to be Uzumaki strong. Kaito looked at Naruto for a second, then to Boruto. All right. One rule change. No clones. One-on-one. Real fight, real openings. I'll go easy. Boruto swallowed, wiped sweat from his brow, and nodded once, jaw set. He didn't use clones this time, the lesson had sunk in. He moved more carefully, breathing regulated, eyes sharper. Kaito watched him with a faint smile, then flicked his gaze to Sasuke, who had been silent at the edge of the clearing. Sasuke's presence was a constant blade, unreadable, observant. Sasuke inclined his head minutely. A silent offer, I'll intervene if Yoroshiki shows up. Good, Kaito said. Now, sense me. Don't wait for my move, anticipate it. Boruto's stance changed. He narrowed his focus, trying to feel the subtle tugs of chakra around Kaito. He took a breath and launched, not with raw speed but with a feint, a twist, a movement intended to pull Kaito's guard. Kaito reacted, but only by a slight shift of weight. Boruto's strike grazed Kaito's shoulder, and for the first time all afternoon, Boruto tasted the thrill of connecting. See? Kushina cheered softly. That's it. Not everything has to be fireworks, Boruto-chan. Just be clever. Kaito nodded. You've got potential. But you need discipline. Relying on flashy jutsu hides bad habits. If you keep building on those habits, you'll break yourself when it matters. Boruto huffed, but there was something like respect in his eyes now. After a few more controlled exchanges, each one testing distance, breath control, and timing, Kaito stopped them both. Sweat soaked Boruto's hair, but his grin was real now. All right, Kaito said, wiping his palms on his pants. You improved in half an hour what usually takes months. That's not bad. Sasuke stepped forward. We need to tighten security. Kaito, after Tsunade analyzes the imprint, I want to help study it. If this mark truly rewrites DNA or chakra at a molecular level, medical ninjutsu alone may not be enough. Kaito nodded. Agreed. Kushina, you did an amazing job with the damping seal. I got a clean imprint, it gave us a fighting chance. Tsunade should be able to pull more from it. But keep Boruto away from strong chakra disturbances. No heavy training. No unnecessary risks. Kushina's expression hardened into resolve. He stays with me. And no one touches him but me. Got it? Naruto plopped down beside Kushina, putting an arm around her shoulders like a kid guarding his mom. We'll protect him, Mom. Don't worry. Boruto, still panting, gave a half salute. Thanks. Everyone. I owe you one. Kaito eyed him. You owe me more than one. Don't make me come collect. Boruto made a face that was half grin, half challenge. Bring it on. They laughed, the tension easing as the sun moved west. For a few small hours the future that wasn't and the future that will be melted into the ordinary, sparring, food, and small talk. Haku and Guren debated training regimes. Kimimaro hardly spoke, but his quiet approval was apparent in the way he observed Boruto's form. Karen teased Naruto about being jealous. Naruto denied it with dramatic indignation. Later, as twilight edged closer, Kaito walked a short distance from the group, closing his eyes. He listened, not with sage mode this time, but with the calm listening that came from years of being attuned to the village. Something distant, like a tremor through the ley lines of chakra, brushed his awareness. It was faint, different from anything he'd felt so far. He opened his eyes. The prickle along his scalp sharpened. Not yet, he thought. But soon. He returned to the group, voice steady. Tsunade will arrive in the morning with a medical team. Until then, Boruto stays, Sasuke stays, and no one else pokes at that mark. Sasuke's only reply was a curt nod. Kushina rose and hugged Boruto awkwardly, half mother, half fierce protector, then looked at Kaito. If anything happens, you take the lead. Promise me. Kaito grinned that boyish, infuriating grin. When have I ever not kept a promise? She let out a breathless laugh and rapped his head lightly. Plenty of times, but I'll let it slide for now. As they packed the picnic away, the sky bled red in the west and the first faint stars pricked through. Boruto sat between Kushina and Naruto, small and oddly at home among strangers who had taken him in. Sasuke watched the trees like a shadow, and Kaito stood with his hands in his pockets, already thinking 3 moves ahead. Far off beyond the village perimeter, the air shifted. A thread of movement, almost too thin to feel, flickered through the world like a strand of silk pulled taut. Kaito felt it, the same tingle that had started this whole chain of events. He tightened his jaw and spoke quietly, mostly to himself. All right. Come find us, Yuroshiki. But you will not find an easy target. And somewhere in the dark beyond the border, time bent its ear and listened. Boruto stared at Kaito for a long moment, fingers still curled where Kaito had offered the hand. The fight had left him winded, humiliated, and, oddly, proud. He let out a long breath and managed a crooked, exhausted grin. All right. Fine. Teach me. But don't go all old man drill sergeant on me, you know. Kaito smirked. No promises. First rule, control, not power. Second rule, you follow Kushina's orders about rest and food. Third rule, if I say stop, you stop. Understood. Boruto nodded, more serious now. Naruto, who'd been sulking in the background like a jealous kid, puffed up and stomped forward. Hey, I want in too. I'll train with you, Boruto. Kai and I, don't forget me, you know. Kushina shot Naruto a look that could melt steel. You are not getting in the way of my guest's recovery. You're going to be his cheer squad and help me with the healing herbs when I need a hand. You're grounded if you cause trouble. Naruto made a face but saluted anyway. Sasuke stepped down from the tree line. If we're doing this properly, we should isolate the mark's progress. Tsunade will need the imprint data and continuous scans. Kaito, can you keep Boruto from training too hard while we analyze the karma? His voice was flat, businesslike. Kaito gave a short nod. I already made Kushina a damping seal copy last night. It's slowing the assimilation, not stopping it. We buy time, not cure. Training now is about control and chakra hygiene, learning to sense the mark and keep it from spreading when it flares. He looked at Boruto. You learn to breathe and move your chakra so it doesn't spike. That'll keep the karma from integrating faster. First lesson began with basics: stance, breathing, chakral flow. Kaito had Boruto lie on his back and breathe through the diaphragm while he guided the boy's hands to feel the ripple of his own chakra. Kushina and Sasuke watched in silence. Naruto hovered like a restless shadow while Karen took mental notes. At first Boruto's breath was shallow and wild, adrenaline still buzzing, but with Kaito's quiet corrections the pattern steadied. Sweat beaded, and his hand, where the karma glowed faintly, relaxed. After an hour of focused drills, slow meditative flows, controlled surge and dampen exercises, light sparring to test reaction without overclocking chakra, Boruto's movements smoothed. He landed a controlled palm strike that wasn't a blind lunge but a measured, precise hit. He panted, smiling despite the fatigue. Okay. That felt good. Different. Kaito allowed himself the smallest of smiles. Good. That's the start. You won't stop the mark overnight, but if you can keep it dormant during stress spikes, you reduce the risk of sudden rewrites. Sasuke, we'll run cellular scans tonight. Kushina and I will try to reverse engineer the seal's pattern into something Tsunade can replicate on a larger scale. Sasuke inclined his head. I'll coordinate with the team from the future, if needed, and keep watch. Uroshiki's arrival is still scheduled within days according to Kurisuki. Anything that shows up now could be probing for karma signatures. Keep him sheltered when we're not training. Kushina took Boruto's hand and squeezed it. You're safe here for now, Boruto-chan. Eat well, sleep well, and practice what Kaikuen teaches you. We'll protect you. Naruto thumped his chest and puffed with exaggerated bravado. Boruto rolled his eyes, but the grateful look in his face was obvious. As night fell and the village lights blinked on, Kaito stood apart for a moment, listening to the faint hum of chakra across the valley. He felt a distant flutter, faint, impatient, like someone testing a latch. He rubbed his chin and murmured, almost to himself, sooner than the turtle predicted. Then he turned back to the house where Kushina fussed over a reluctant Boruto's sleep schedule and said, aloud this time, tomorrow morning, Tsunade full scan. Tonight, rest. And Boruto, don't run off. Not even for 1 minute. Boruto, half asleep on the couch with Kushina's blanket over his shoulders, muttered, yes, uncle, and actually meant it. Outside the Uzumaki garden the wind picked up, and somewhere beyond the last line of trees, something distant shifted in the weave of time, a presence answering a call it had long been sent to follow. Boruto's face went red, but he didn't argue. Fine. 50. I can do 50, he spat, more to prove something to himself than to the clone. Good, the clone said, voice flat. Start now. He exploded forward, heavy, awkward, full of raw energy but no finesse. The weighted seal pressed down like an iron band across his shoulders, each step a fight. The first 10 laps were brutal. Boruto's breath came in hot, ragged pulls, his calves burned, his lungs screamed. The other kids watched from the shade, Naruto pacing like a caged animal, Haku and Kimimaro quietly impressed, Guren smirking, while Karen took notes with the single-mindedness of a librarian cataloging chaos. On lap 11 something in Boruto clicked. He stopped thinking about the weight and began thinking about rhythm, heel, toe, breath. The seal's resistance still made him slow, but each stride was steadier, his posture less hunched. The clone's seals adjusted as promised, tiny easing pulses that rewarded consistency. By lap 20 he'd stopped panting on every corner and was keeping a pace that, unweighted, would have looked fast. The clone watched with folded arms. Good. Now do 5 sets of explosive sprints, 10 meters all out, then give me 20 deep breaths and repeat. Boruto's legs felt like lead when the sprint interval started. He launched himself forward anyway. Each sprint tore at him, but his form tightened, knees driving, arms pumping, land on the balls of the feet. The clone's weighted seal nudged his body into efficient motion, punishing flailing and encouraging refinement. By the time the clone called the warm-up finished, Boruto's shirt clung to his back, his lip was split but healed enough to sting less, and his eyes had a new focus. He collapsed on the ground, gasping and grinning like a boy who'd survived a storm. Naruto, hungry for the same thrill, pounded his shoulder and howled encouragement until Kushina shooed him away, don't you break him. Sasuke, who had been standing at the treeline watching with the calm calculation of a hawk, finally stepped forward. Enough endurance for 1 day, he said. Now we work the eye. Boruto's face hardened at the word. The eye, yeah. Sasuke led him to a quiet spot beneath the oaks where the leaves filtered sunlight into drifting patterns. Close your eyes, he ordered. I'll guide you. Sense the hole behind your right eye, not a hole, but a pressure point where chakra converges. Don't push it, listen to it. Match your breathing to its rhythm. Boruto obeyed. At first, the pressure felt like static, annoying but indistinct. Sasuke's voice was a distant metronome. Breathe in, soft, steady. Now imagine your chakra flowing across the ridge of your skull toward the eye. Boruto pictured the flow like a silver thread. It wavered. He tightened his jaw. Loosen, Sasuke said. Let it feel, don't force. On the third attempt something slipped into place, a small current of feeling pooled behind the eye, cool and clear as water. Boruto's right eyelid fluttered. Light snowflake patterns of blue fizzed at the corner of his vision. No full activation, just a taste. His breath hitched. Hold it, Sasuke said. Don't let it shock you. That was good, repeat 10 breaths and stop. After the breathing set, Boruto opened his eyes and sagged with relief. I felt it, he said, a mixture of triumph and exhaustion painting his voice. You'll feel it more often as you condition, Sasuke replied. But remember, dojutsu are not a power you can sprint to. Patience and restraint. If that eye connects on instinct during a fight, it can be invaluable. If you force it, you'll hurt yourself. Kaito's shadow clone returned at dusk to report in. Kushina had been stabilized and tucked into a bed with a hot compress and strict orders to sleep. Kaito himself arrived 15 minutes later, feet dusted with the smell of medicine and travel. He looked tired, more tired than his joking wanted to show, but satisfied when the clone briefed him on the progress. Kushina's resting and the pill did its thing, the clone summarized. Boruto got his conditioning in and actually stopped flinching mid-lap. Kaito's gaze flicked to Boruto, who was sprawled on the blanket and trying very hard to appear casually exhausted. Good. He pushed without breaking. That was the point. Boruto managed a weak salute. Told you. I can take it. Kaito's smile was small and almost approving. He took a breath as if choosing words. We'll keep the regimen. Physical conditioning, controlled chakra drills, and eye training. Sasuke will oversee the Jogan calibration. Kushina and I will work on the Karma Seal copy tonight. If we get a clean imprint, Tsunade can run cellular scans tomorrow. We need data before we can start reversing anything. Sasuke nodded. And I'll post patrols discreetly. If Yuroshiki or others show up early, we'll know within minutes. Kushina, peeking from the doorway where she insisted on supervising from a safe distance, waved a hand like a referee. And no death-defying stunts near the house. Understood, everyone. Her tone made it clear that understood was an imperative, not a suggestion. Naruto, who hadn't stopped mimicking a stern grown-up all day, puffed up and took the role of official cheerleader. We'll do our best. Boruto-chan will be super strong by the time he goes home, he declared, punching the air. Boruto laughed tiredly. Or I'll just be worse at hurting my family with my face. Night folded over Konoha and the stars blinked as if watching plans thicken. Somewhere to the west, faint in the weave of time, Kurisuke's mechanical voice ticked through a memory. Coordinates and a countdown. But for now, in the Uzumaki garden, the most dangerous thing was the quiet resolve settling into the kids' shoulders. They would train. They would learn. They would buy time. Kaito sat for a long moment, listening to the hush, then stood and walked to the fence. He stared at the moon and whispered, half to himself, half to the world, "Come if you must. We'll be ready." The waitress returned at the sound of clinking dishes, a pitcher of cold tea balanced on her hip. "Sorry for the wait. Your grill's ready," she said, bowing slightly. She set a tray of raw meat and vegetables down in the center. Smoke coals hissed, and the scent of sesame oil and garlic teased at everyone's noses. Finally, Hannah sighed happily, already snatching a pair of tongs. "About time we eat." Kaito slid the first slab of meat on the grill with a casual flick and the table erupted into a chorus of delighted little noises. Hataru watched him with quiet amusement, letting her smiling eyes do most of the talking while Boruto sat there trying to look unimpressed and failing. Anko, still perched at the edge of the booth, watched Kaito flip meat like she was both proud and mildly suspicious. "You haven't changed," she teased. "Still hogging the best spots." Kaito feigned offense. "Hey, someone's gotta be in charge of quality control." Itachi, who spent most of the night offering a single, narrowed-lidded observation at unexpected moments, finally leaned forward. "Boruto," he said, low and direct. "Tell me again about the mark. Did it show up suddenly? Was there pain?" Boruto glanced at Kaito, who gave a subtle shrug. "Handle it." The blonde swallowed, then met Itachi's gaze. "It just appeared. No big pain. Sometimes it kind of itches. That's about it." "I don't." He stopped, realizing how little that explanation helped. Kaito cut in smoothly before the conversation could get heavier. "He's been honest with us. We'll test it tomorrow. For now, enjoy the food and try not to freak out Mom more than she already is." He shot a warning look across the table where Kushina's present in spirit, and in many later recountings, worked like an affectionate weather vane for anyone's misbehavior. Naruto, who'd been vacuuming a plate in record time, chimed in with characteristic enthusiasm. "Hey, Sparring again tomorrow? I wanna try that Resenden thing you did earlier, it was epic. He made air razor motions with his chopsticks. Kaito spared Naruto a tired smile that actually softened. We'll run the regimen, conditioning, chakra control, eye drills. You and Boruto will get partner work. Sasuke will help with finer calibration. Sasuke's one visible eye gave a tilt of acknowledgement. I'll run timing drills. Don't let him risk overusing the Jogan. Hataru, hands folded politely on her lap, asked quietly, is it dangerous to push the eye? Will it hurt him? Sasuke's face didn't change. Dojutsu are tools. Used recklessly, they're liabilities. We'll be careful. Hana elbowed Izumi with a grin and then dropped her voice conspiratorially toward Boruto. So tell us something scandalous about the future, will ya? Like, does Naruto become terrible at fashion? Boruto's blush was immediate. No. He's fine. And not everything's fair game, okay? Anko laughed, flicked some sesame seeds into Hana's hair, then studied Tenzo's photo Kaito had promised to show her, and never did, Kaito's memory being what it was. He okay looking? She asked, half mocking, half curious. Kurenai, who'd been watching the whole exchange with indulgent amusement, leaned forward. Anko, give him a chance. He's not a bad person. Her grin implied she'd read more about him than anyone admitted aloud. Anko rolled her eyes and then, surprising everyone, she actually nodded. All right, I'll go on one date, she said, loud enough that a few heads at neighboring tables glanced over. But just one. And if he's dull, I'm leaving. Hataru squeezed Kaito's hand under the table, a small, private thank you the two shared, and the rest of the group cheered the decision with a chorus of whoops and teasing. Between bites and laughter, the talk drifted back to logistics. Kaito sketched out the training plan in clipped sentences. Morning, physical conditioning. Noon, chakra molding and Rasengan basics with me. Afternoon, Jogan awareness under Sasuke. Evening, SEAL research with Kushina and Tsunade's lab permission. No unsanctioned missions. Itachi tilted his head. I'll monitor the area. If Urashiki shows signs earlier than the device predicted, we pull Boruto and Sasuke from the field and put up the barriers. Boruto swallowed, the grin drained from his face for a brief second, the weight of it. Got it, he said. I don't want to get anyone hurt. Kushina's voice, warm and fierce in equal measure, cut in from the next table where she'd come over to fuss yet again. And you boys better eat. You need strength to make big muscles. She smacked Kaito lightly when he tried to decline more meat, and his face went exactly that familiar shade of mildly embarrassed but pleased. The night wound down with stories, small competitions of who could eat the spiciest slice without crying, and the quiet, easy bonding of people who, by habit, blood, or fate, kept showing up for each other. When everyone finally stood to leave, the arrangement for the next day was already clear. Kaito, checking a small wrist sundial, pushed to make the schedule official. 0800, conditioning. 1000, SEAL analysis. Sasuke, you and I sweep the eastern perimeter at 1600. Boruto, don't wander alone. Boruto shot him a look that mixed gratitude with steely resolve. I won't. I'll be ready. Itachi's expression was unreadable as he stepped past them to the door. We'll be outside. Rest well. Outside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of coal and grilled meat. Lanterns swung softly. Boruto, hands in his pockets, glanced up at the stars and felt for a second like time was a long rope and he'd been given one end to hold. He tightened his grip, then looked back at Kaito. Thanks, uncle, he said, quieter than he'd expected. Kaito just smirked and shoved his hands into his pockets. Don't call me that in front of Mom, he replied, but the way he tossed Boruto a small, lopsided smile said what words didn't. We've got work to do, and you're not going to go it alone. They walked back into the night, 2 timelines worth of history tangled into a present that smelled of soy, smoke, and the quiet promise of training. The village slept around them, and for the first time in a long while, a small knot of people felt like they were putting together the pieces before the storm could reach their doorstep. Kaito's kunai hummed in his hand. The hairs along his neck prickled, an old, dangerous kind of cold. He scanned the treetops before his eyes snapped to the clearing's edge where the grass bowed as if something invisible had passed through it. My, it seems my plans really have been knocked off kilter. The voice was smooth and amused, like a man listening to a joke he hadn't yet decided was funny. A ripple of blue-white light shimmered between two trunks, and then a figure stepped out, landing with cat-like grace in the center of the training field. He was thin, almost elegant, dressed in pale robes that sucked the color from the world around him. A long, hooked staff dangled from one wrist, the tip glittering like a fishhook. When he turned his head, Boruto's breath hitched. The stranger's two bright eyes cut across the group and settled on him like a predatory light. Urashiki. Kushina made a tiny, involuntary sound and went still. Naruto's face went white. Boruto's fingers tightened on his bento until the bamboo snapped. Kaito didn't think. He moved. Everyone get back. He barked, and his shadow clones were a flurry. Two forming barriers at Kushina's sides, another tearing toward Naruto and Boruto to shield them. Kaito's real body slipped through a hairline gap and positioned himself between the Otsutsuki and the people he cared about. Urashiki cocked his head, amused. So many attachments. How quaint. He took a step forward, each movement slow and deliberate. You must be the boy the future sent. How delightful. Boruto sneered, spite flashing through his fear. If you're here for Naruto, you've got the wrong family to mess with. Urashiki's smile was a slash of malice. I don't mess. I collect. He flicked his wrist and the hook on his staff sprang to life, a fine filament of chakra like a fishing line shooting across the field. Kaito's eyes widened. He recognized the shimmer in an instant. Chakra fishing. Get down. He yelled. His warning came half a breath too late. The filament found air and then flesh. It sliced across the grass, stabbed the earth, and struck a shadow clone full in the chest. The clone convulsed, its chakra siphoned, and puffed into smoke. Kaito cursed and lunged, but Urashiki was already moving, fast, unnatural. Sasuke dropped from the trees in a black blur, one eye narrowed, the other a calm, unreadable moon. He moved to intercept the second filament before it lashed at Boruto, but the Otsutsuki's hand darted out and the air between them hummed as if split by thunder. The hook sank into the earth and, for a heartbeat, the whole world felt empty, like someone had taken a breath out of it. Boruto staggered, his palm pulsed where the karma mark sat. The mark itself glowed faintly, an angry black that seemed to twist under Urashiki's gaze. Careful with that, Urashiki purred, eyes flicking toward the mark. Very curious thing you have there, boy. A fine seed. So fragile. So useful. Kaito's jaw clenched. He reached for a kunai and flicked his wrist. The blade vanished into a Hiraition flash, reappearing behind Urashiki. The Otsutsuki didn't even flinch, his robe barely fluttered. He took another step and the kunai fizzed harmlessly out like a candle snuffed. Space-time tricks, Urashiki mused with a careless shrug. Old. Tiring. He raised the staff and the filament split into three, each line striking a different shadow clone and siphoning their chakra like a net. The clones collapsed in succession, leaving nothing but little puffs of smoke. Kaito felt panic skitter at the edges of his mind. He forced it down and reached, instead, for calculation. The barrier seals. He'd set up layers earlier this morning, threaded through the training field as a contingency. Now he slammed them into motion with a hand sign, sending a lattice of glowing seals rising from the grass. Chains of chakra erupted from Kaito's back and wrapped themselves around the lattice, a glowing web. Bind his access to the children. Kaito shouted. Kushina, Naruto, inside the seal now. Kushina moved without hesitation, grabbing Naruto and pulling him into the inner ring. Boruto tried to follow but Urashiki's filament brushed his shoulder and a shock of static pain pinned him in place. Sasuke moved like a coiled blade, appearing at Boruto's side and placing a hand to the boy's back, an anchor and a warning. Don't move, he said quietly. His tone held something fierce, not just command but a vow. Urashiki laughed, small and delighted. So theatrical, he said, and the air around him shimmered. He lifted the hook and flicked it. The filament shot out at Kaito in a straight bright line. Kaito met it with chakra chains, the two energies colliding with a sound like metal across stone. Sparks flew. For a second everything was white light and sound, and Kaito's arms trembled under the force. He pushed with every scrap of will he had, refusing to let the line slip. "You shouldn't have come here," Yuroshiki said, soft as a petal. "Your future is messy, full of threads you cannot untangle. But you are stubborn. I like that." Kaito's teeth clenched. His knuckles went white around the chain he held. "Leave. Now. Or I will make you leave broken." Yuroshiki's smile widened. "Such spirit. Such fury. Perhaps I'll keep the boy for a while. See how the mark blossoms." At the word, the karma on Boruto flared bright, black veins crawling up his wrist. Boruto's breath hitched, his face twisting. He swore, a raw animal sound, and something in his right eye flickered like a stormlight. Sasuke shifted, reacting to the surge of dojutsu chakra. "He's destabilizing it," Sasuke warned. Kaito's mind exploded with possibilities and no clear answer. The lattice of seals around Kushina dimmed for a second as Yuroshiki siphoned through the earth, a cold, invasive presence like frost under skin. The training field shuddered. Kaito met Yuroshiki's gaze, and in it was the patient cruelty of a man who knew he had time. "If you touch him," Kaito said, voice low and controlled, "if you so much as scratch that mark, I'll turn whatever's left of you into nothing. I swear it." Yuroshiki scared. "A promise. How human." Then, almost lazily, he flicked his wrist again, the hook humming, and for a sliver of a second the world tilted. But Kaito wasn't done. He had one blade left in his pocket, a tiny cylindrical seal he'd been refining, an emergency bind he could plant on a hook. He jammed his thumb to the wax, whispered the sealing chant and launched, this time not with Hiration, but with a sliver of senjutsu threaded into the throw. The kunai spun through the air in a red blurred streak, lightning and nature energy braided into it. Yuroshiki's hand snatched at it, predictably, and the blade struck the staff with a crackle that sounded like a bell breaking. For an instant, Yuroshiki faltered. "Ah," he said, more intrigued than angry. "Interesting." Kaito took the opening. "Now!" he shouted to Sasuke. Sasuke's chakra coalesced in a precise, coiling strike aimed not to kill, but to sever the filament's hold. He moved like a shadow slicing silk, and the air answered. Filaments snapped and retracted like wounded ropes. But the breach came at a cost. Yuroshiki smiled, and with a motion so smooth it read like ritual, he rewound part of the battlefield into nothing, a small, clinical erasure. Boruto staggered as if struck. The karma dimmed for a heartbeat and then glowed darker, deeper. Yuroshiki tilted his head, delighted. "Excellent. You've given me opportunity. I expected little more than children and noise. Delightful. I shall return to my work. In a time that suits me better." He stepped back, the staff hummed in his hand. The filament retracted like a fish being pulled home. The air around him shimmered with that same strange light, and in a blink the Otsutsuki was gone. No sound, no footprint, only the scent of cold ozone and a faint spark of stolen chakra left where he had stood. The clearing felt hollow. A dozen small alarms flared in Kaito's mind, not all of them audible. Kushina's breath came ragged but steady. Naruto clutched his chest and blinked up at the sky as if expecting the monster to fall from it. Boruto fell to his knees and stared at his palm where the karma mark had turned, darker than before. Kaito dropped to one knee opposite him, chest heaving, fingers still warm from the chains. He looked at Boruto, at Kushina, at Sasuke. The weight of the moment settled on him like lead. "We bought time," Sasuke said quietly. "He'll be back." Kaito let out a long, bitter laugh. "Time's not what I need. I need answers. And I need a way to undo whatever that thing did to your boy." Boruto looked up at him, eyes rimmed with a strange, fierce light. "Then teach me," he said. "Teach me everything." Kaito's shoulders dropped, half exhaustion, half relief. "Start now," he said. "We train. We research. We find a way to unmake that mark before it makes him someone else." Above them, the first stars pricked through the night. The village was quiet, but the sleep was thin. The storm had only taken its first breath. The world detonated. The Fuin tandem explosive bloomed like a jagged sun, one bloom, then another, a chain of eruptions that tore the training field into ragged seams. Trees were shorn off at the roots, the air filled with a choking rain of earth and ash. The force shoved everyone to their knees, stinging their ears and rattling the bones in their chests. For a moment there was nothing but noise and heat, and the metallic tang of chakra spilled into the sky. Then the smoke thinned. Where Urashiki had stood, the grass was gone. The ground had collapsed into a blackened crater, a ring of smoking earth surrounding a gouge of shattered stone. The origami remnants that had hung like red leaves were reduced to curled ash. For a breathless second no one moved. The only sound was Kushina's quiet, ragged intake of air and the distant groan of wounded trees. And then movement, slow, stubborn, furious. Something crawled free from the crater's center. Urashiki's robes were scorched, his pale skin was laced with black seams where the explosions had singed him, his staff lay bent and smoking to one side. He staggered up on knees that should not have supported him, and his eyes, those terrible, alien eyes, flickered with surprise, then irritation, then hungry amusement. "Impressive," he whispered, voice raw from the blast. "You make noise. You make mess. I enjoy it." He tried to step forward and the world cooperated, until he felt it, the weight. A seal, cold and sure, was sitting against one ankle as if the ground itself had grown teeth. He looked down. The kunai, the small sealing kunai Kaito had threaded with senjutsu, protruded from the soil by his foot. A fine, red sigil crawled from it and wrapped a filigree of binding across the crater's rim. Kaito appeared at the edge of the crater then, breathing hard, slime still drying on his arms. He wore the tired, iron expression of someone who'd spent too many minutes and too much blood on a calculus of risk. Sasuke slid beside him, blade in hand, eyes dark and unreadable. "Stay." Kaito's voice carried over the wind. "You don't get to wander away and come back for seconds." Urashiki laughed, a sound like glass. He pushed with all the animal will of a thing that had never accepted no for an answer, and the sealing filigree brightened, humming with an angry countercurrent. For a heartbeat it looked like he might wrench it loose. The air around his arm shimmered and something like a shadow tried to unweave the sigils. And then Sasuke's hand threaded through space and seized the bent tip of Urashiki's staff with a slashing cold palm. The Uchiha's chakra flared, the Rinnegan blinked like an eye opening in the dark. With a motion as merciless as a blade, Sasuke twisted. Urashiki screamed. Not an elegant cry, something high and furious and wrong. The staff snapped in two, and with it some of the control he'd been using to keep a foothold in their timeline. Kaito seized the opening. He slammed both palms to the earth and poured senjutsu and sealing chakra into the filigree. Threads of nature and wool braided with a medicine seal Kushina had helped stabilize for him. The sigil flared, then buckled inward like a trapdoor. For a breath the field held him pinned, held him like a live thing in a stilled cage. Urashiki's body convulsed as the seal attempted to wrest the outer fragments of his borrowed power away. He had expected suffering. He had not expected resistance so cunning, so surgical. He spat blood, and when he glared up at them again the amusement had thinned to a cold, patient fury. "You think to bind me?" he hissed. "You little ants have no idea what you've caught." Kaito's jaw tightened. "Then you'll find out," he said. "We'll learn. And when we do, we'll rip you out." With a twisting, shuddering wrench, Urashiki drew on whatever remnants of his dimensional anchor he could salvage. The air around him bent. For an instant it looked as though he might tear free, back to wherever he'd come from, dragging nothing but smoke behind him. But Sasuke's hand was a cold clasp at his shoulder. Kaito's seals burned like iron bands. Kushina, breath steady above the hill where the villagers watched from a safe distance, began a counterchant, short, fierce, maternal, the kind of small, private power that had saved children before and would again if she could. Urashiki's form thrummed with the sound of collapsing stars. For an instant the world seemed to fold at the edges. The whole village might have been rewritten by the force of his will. Then, with a sound like cloth being torn, something gave. A fragment of space sheared open and a wild wind screamed through it. Urashiki's eyes widened, surprise, then fury, then a slow, terrible grin. He spat, "Enjoy your victory, Uzumaki." He ripped free. Not destroyed. Not sealed permanently. Instead, the Otsutsuki yanked himself through that thin, raw slit in the fabric of reality and was gone in a flash of awful light, taking with him a jagged sliver of the battlefield, a handful of scorched earth, and a last mocking echo, "We shall meet again." When the light died, there was only smoke, rain of ash, and the taste of lightning on everyone's tongues. Silence pressed in, heavy as a lid. Kaito fell to his knees beside the charred rim of the crater. His palms were cut, his breath came ragged. Sasuke slid down to sit opposite him, one hand still on the ground where the broken staff had lain. Nearby, Kushina sagged against a tree, hands over her stomach where the old pain had begun to hum again. Naruto leaned against her, pale but stubbornly grinning as if to prove nothing could break his spirits. Boruto knelt on the other side of Kaito, staring at his palm. The karma mark was different. The black lines had darkened, deeper than before, and an undercurrent of alien warmth hummed under the skin, like a distant engine still turning. Kaito looked up and found Boruto's eyes. The boy's face was raw, ash on his cheeks, chin split from the fall, but there was a ferocity there that made Kaito's chest ache. "We didn't lose him," Boruto said quietly. "Not yet." Kaito scrubbed his face with both hands and let out a humorless laugh. "He knows us now. He'll think twice next time before he strolls into Konoha." Sasuke's voice was low and certain. "He won't stop. He's an Otsutsuki. This was harassment. A test. He will return with more resources, allies, other means. We buy time but not peace." Kushina's hand found Boruto's and squeezed. "We'll be ready. We will be ready." Kaito straightened with effort, shoulders squared though every muscle screamed. He thought of the kunai he'd used, of the copy he'd made of Boruto's karma, of the stacks of notes in his notebook, the things he'd yet to finish, the seals he'd yet to perfect. He thought of the villagers, of Naruto laughing in the face of danger, of Kushina's tired smile, of Sasuke's unreadable steady presence. "We hole up and grind," Kaito said. "Research with Mom. Sasuke, your scans of his chakra, every trace. I'll make a list of seals and countermeasures. Boruto, train. Start with control. If that mark is a seed, we root it out. If it's a lock, we learn the key before it finishes growing." Boruto did not flinch from the command. He nodded, the resolve that had been tempered by pain shining raw. "I'll do it. Teach me. Don't let him take me." Kaito slid a hand onto Boruto's shoulder, firm, protective. "You won't be taken. Not by him. Not by anyone, as long as I breathe." Far off, in the darkening sky above Konoha, a single star winked out as clouds rolled over it. The night smelled of smoke, salt, and the clean, metallic bite of new resolve. Urashiki had gone, for now. But his hook, his staff, the shadow of his appetite had left marks. The village had changed by a single afternoon, nerves had tightened, plans shifted, and an ordinary training ground now sat scarred like a wound. They had won the skirmish. The war, if it came, was only beginning. Kaito rose, extending a hand to help Boruto up. "Tomorrow," he said quietly, "we start over. Early. No excuses." Boruto took his hand, and for the first time since he'd arrived in their past, his mouth curved into a small, fierce smile. "Tomorrow," he echoed. "I'll be ready." Blood dripped steadily from Kaito's mouth as he swayed on his knees, breath hitching and shallow. The world tilted sideways, blurry shapes, distorted colors, but the pain cutting through his chest kept him conscious enough to understand exactly what had happened. A hand had gone straight through his ribs. Urashiki's hand. Kaito barely tilted his head before he staggered forward and fell, face first, into churned earth. The warmth spreading under him wasn't comforting. It was his own blood, pooling faster than he could breathe. Urashiki stood behind him, chest heaving, the left side of his face burned black, robes torn apart. He cradled the swirling green chakra pill he had ripped from Kaito's body and gave a tired, almost irritated chuckle. "To think, an insect like you, could force me to this state." He swallowed the pill in one bite. The moment it hit his tongue, his wounds began to stitch themselves together, burns sizzling out, skin knitting, muscles regrowing with a wet, squirming sound. It was obscene how quickly he recovered. Kushina's breath hitched sharply. "Kaito." She tried to stand, but pain exploded in her abdomen and she dropped to her knees, one arm clutching her stomach. Tears blurred her eyes as she tried to crawl, her nails scraping against the dirt. Kaikuan. Kaikuan, no, 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 no. Her voice cracked into silent sobs. Naruto's hands trembled at his sides, his eyes locked onto his older brother's still body. He didn't blink. He didn't breathe. Something inside him snapped with the sound of a glass heart breaking. Ni-chan. The ground rumbled. Red chakra spilled out around the boy like a bursting dam. One tail. Then two. Then three. A monstrous roar tore out of Naruto's throat, shaking the trees. The ground cracked beneath him as the nine-tails cloak erupted into full form. Boruto staggered backward, eyes wide, horrified. What the hell? Urashiki turned, eyes dilating with fascination. My, what beautiful chakra. He didn't get long to admire it. Naruto lunged. The boy moved with feral speed, each step shattering the earth like a bomb going off. Urashiki barely dodged the first wild swing, and he laughed as he sidestepped the second. You wild little, he flicked his wrist. The hooked rod shot out and struck Naruto in the chest. But when Urashiki yanked, the hook came back empty. What? Naruto roared again, rage overwhelming everything. Urashiki frowned. A seal? Annoying. The red cloak grew thicker. Naruto's skin began peeling. Bones shifted under the influence of chakra. Boruto felt cold sweat run down his back. Naruto, stop. You're going too far. The boy didn't even hear him. Urashiki's grin returned. Perfect. If the seal breaks, I can take everything you have. He reached for Naruto's stomach. A golden chain lashed out and wrapped Naruto's body mid-air. Urashiki froze. Kushina gasped. Those chains, from across the field, through smoke and blood and pain, Kaito rose. Barely. He was on one knee, chest gaping open where a hand had gone straight through him. But nature energy surged around him like glowing mist, Katsuyu clinging to his shoulder, guiding the flow. Slug sage markings spread cleanly across his face. No slime. Perfect sage mode. Kaito clenched his trembling fists. Not happening, on my watch. Naruto snarled and thrashed violently, but Kaito hauled him toward himself with the chakra chains. When Naruto reached him, Kaito slammed his palm onto the boy's stomach. A sealing formula burst to life. The cloak peeled away, like red fire being sucked into a vacuum. Naruto screamed once as the chakra was ripped off him, then collapsed unconscious into Kaito's arms. Kaito held him tightly for a moment. It's okay. I've got you. Then he felt something flicker against his skin. Golden chakra. Whirling, alive, swirling around his limbs. Kurama's chakra. Kaito stared down at his own hands as yellow light flickered, strengthening him for a brief, desperate moment. I don't have long. He gently laid Naruto down, then vanished. Sasuke stumbled, panting, blood dripping down his chin. His sword lay several feet away, and Urashiki advanced slowly, rod raised. Any last words? The rod came down. Kaito appeared between them like a bolt of lightning. Urashiki's eyes widened. What? Kaito's right hand glowed with a spiraling sphere of energy. Not blue-red. Lightning crackled through it like living fire. Sage art. He lowered his stance. Red lightning massive Rasengan. He slammed it forward. Urashiki roared and summoned a massive purple orb. The two attacks collided, air warping, pressure vibrating through the forest. Dirt lifted in sheets. Trees bent and splintered. Kaito screamed, pouring everything he had left into the attack. Kirin. A bolt of divine lightning tore down from the sky and speared Urashiki from above. The shock numbed him. His technique faltered. Kaito's Rasengan compressed instantly. He whispered, Resenden. The energy condensed into a bullet. Boom. It smashed through Urashiki's arm, then expanded again, and devoured him whole. The world exploded in red light. The shockwave blasted through trees and tore clouds open above them. When the dust finally settled, nothing of Urashiki remained. Kaito wavered, chest heaving. Then, Darkness swallowed him. He collapsed face-first into the dirt, unconscious. Sasuke's roar split the air. Now Kirin. The clouds above convulsed, ripped open by a blinding white vein of lightning. A thunderclap tore across the forest as the bolt descended and slammed into Urashiki with divine fury. Urashiki screamed, his body locking and spasming violently as the celestial lightning coursed through him. Kaito didn't waste a heartbeat. His Rasengan, already massive, swirling with red lightning, tightened in his grip as his fingers curled with purpose. Chakra compressed, the sphere shrinking into a dense spiral that vibrated like a living heart. Rasengan. The compressed bullet of chakra shot from his palm like a cannon blast. Boom! It speared straight through Urashiki's outstretched hand, shattering bone and flesh in a spray of blood and blue-white energy. The recoil tore open Kaito's palm, skin ripping, blood dripping down his arm, but he didn't stop. Before Urashiki could even scream, the Rasengan expanded again, blooming into its massive form just centimeters from his face. Kaboom! The red lightning Rasengan swallowed him whole. The explosion tore the forest open. Trees vanished in an instant, vaporized. Rocks melted into black glass. A cyclone of smoke and wind spiraled upward, erupting into the sky in a roaring column of light. When the last echoes faded, Kaito stood alone in the ruined clearing, trembling, breath ragged. The chakra in the air flickered once, then vanished. He couldn't sense Urashiki anymore. It's over, his vision dimmed. The world fell sideways. Kaito collapsed with a heavy, final thud, unconscious before he hit the ground. And that wraps up today's episode of What If Naruto Had a Big Brother. Kaito's journey is only getting more intense, and the future of the ninja world is changing with every step he takes. If you enjoyed this episode and want to see what happens next, make sure to hit that like button, share the video with other Naruto fans, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an update. Drop your theories in the comments. I love reading them. See you in the next episode.